we are heading over to see what's being done. We're supposed to be getting rock delivered this morning. Yes, it is still very wet, but we needed some more on the road, and that was not too wet.
She looked like she had it all figured out. A quiet life, open fields, a camera rolling while the rest of the world rushed past. Meredith Bernard, better known as This Farm Wife, built an online image rooted in simplicity, faith, and hard work. But the more her channel grew, the more people started asking the same question. What's really going on behind the scenes? Because farm life isn't just sunrise chores and wholesome moments. It's pressure, it's sacrifice, and sometimes it's carrying weight that never makes it onto camera. Over the years, subtle changes, emotional posts, and online speculation sparked rumors that something deeper was unfolding in Meredith's life. Not a dramatic headline moment, but a slow, quiet shift that most viewers almost missed. So what actually happened to the woman millions came to see as the picture of peace? And how much of her story has been misunderstood all along? The answers might surprise you. For Meredith Bernard, the shift didn't happen overnight. It started quietly, in a world far removed from muddy boots and early morning feedings. Before This Farm Wife became a familiar name online, Meredith lived a life that looked far more predictable. A steady corporate sales job, a structured schedule, clear expectations.
Hey y'all, we are going to go feed a bottle calf. Yeah, so the boys are both different places this morning, taking care of different things, and so I'm going.
On paper, it was the kind of stability many people chase for years. But behind that routine was a growing feeling that something wasn't lining up. The pull toward farm life wasn't about aesthetics or trends. It came from a desire to slow things down and be present in ways her previous life didn't allow. Long hours away from home meant missing moments that couldn't be replaced. And while the job paid the bills, it came at a personal cost that kept building. Eventually, the question became impossible to ignore. Was security worth feeling disconnected from her own family? Walking away from that career wasn't glamorous. There was no safety net waiting on. The other side, just land, livestock, and responsibility. Farm life demanded everything, physically and mentally. Days didn't end at 5. Weather didn't care about plans. Mistakes were expensive, and rest was rare. But for Meredith, that hard reality felt more honest than the life she left behind. As she adjusted, she began documenting small moments online. Nothing polished, nothing dramatic, just real days, real work, and real exhaustion. That honesty struck a nerve. Viewers saw someone learning as she went, juggling motherhood, marriage, and a demanding way of life most people never experience firsthand. And slowly, without any grand strategy, an audience formed. But while her online presence grew, the pressure did too. Because turning your real life into content comes with a cost most people don't see. And as Meredith would soon learn, the more people watched, the more they believed they knew her story, even when they didn't. What started as simple documentation slowly turned into something much bigger. Meredith wasn't chasing algorithms or viral moments. She filmed between chores, recorded thoughts after long days, and shared farm routines the way they actually happened. No heavy editing, no forced positivity. That raw approach made people feel like they weren't just watching content. They were stepping into her life. As her audience grew, so did expectations. Viewers wanted consistency, daily uploads, answers, personal details. And that's where things began to shift, because when people feel connected to a creator, they often forget there's a line. Comments started digging deeper, questions became more personal, some supportive, others invasive. Every pause, every emotional post, every change in tone was suddenly analyzed. Farm life didn't slow down just because the channel grew. Cattle still needed care, kids still needed attention, bills still came due, and now there was an invisible pressure layered on top. The pressure to always show up online, even on days when energy was gone. Meredith never openly complained, but longtime viewers noticed subtle differences. Posts felt heavier, reflections ran deeper, smiles didn't always reach her eyes. That's when speculation crept in. Online communities began filling in gaps with their own theories. Was something wrong with her marriage? Was the farm struggling more than she let on? Had something happened behind the scenes that she wasn't ready to share? None of these questions had clear answers, but the curiosity kept growing. The reality was simpler and harder. When your real life becomes your livelihood, there's no off switch. Every hardship feels public, even when you try to keep it private. And for Meredith, the weight of carrying a brand built on authenticity meant she couldn't fake her way through tough seasons. But what most people didn't realize was that the quiet changes they noticed were only the beginning, because the hardest part of her journey wasn't something viewers could easily spot, and it was about to test everything she'd built. By the time people started sensing something was different, Meredith was already deep in it. Farm life has a way of amplifying stress when things go wrong. Animals don't wait for emotions to settle. Weather doesn't pause for burnout. And when margins are tight, one bad season can ripple through everything. For someone sharing that life online, the pressure hits from all sides at once. Viewers often saw the peaceful moments, quiet mornings, home-cooked meals, thoughtful reflections. But those clips were only fragments of much longer days. Behind the camera were early mornings that started before sunrise and nights that stretched long after the kids were asleep. The workload didn't ease just because the channel grew. If anything, it became heavier. Farming demanded her body, content demanded her time, and family needed both. That balancing act began to show in subtle ways. Posts became less frequent. Captions felt more reflective, sometimes even guarded. She spoke about gratitude, but also about endurance, about faith being tested, not just celebrated. Longtime followers picked up on the shift, sensing that the calm exterior was holding something together rather than simply reflecting peace. This was also when outside voices grew louder. The internet has a habit of turning silence into suspicion. When Meredith chose not to explain every struggle, others tried to explain it for her. Comment sections filled with assumptions. Forums picked apart small details. A missed upload became proof something was wrong. A quiet week sparked entire threads of speculation. But the truth was less dramatic and more human. Life was demanding more than she could easily give. And when your identity, income, and personal life overlap, stepping back feels risky. There's guilt in slowing down, fear in disappointing people, and pressure to stay strong when you're still figuring things out yourself. Meredith never leaned into the rumors. She didn't dramatize her struggles for clicks. Instead, she pulled inward, choosing restraint over explanation. And while that choice protected her privacy, it also left room for others to write their own versions of her story. What they didn't realize was that the most difficult part wasn't public speculation at all. It was the quiet weight of carrying responsibility when no one else could carry it for her. As the speculation grew louder, Meredith stayed consistent in one way. She never let the noise dictate her message. Instead of reacting to rumors or addressing every theory, she kept sharing what she felt comfortable sharing. And that choice confused some people. In a space where oversharing often gets rewarded, her restraint stood out. Her content began leaning more into reflection than routine. Less about proving anything, more about grounding herself. She talked about seasons of life, about learning when to push and when to pause. Faith became a steady undercurrent, not as a performance, but as something she clearly leaned on when answers weren't obvious. To some viewers, that shift felt comforting. To others, it felt like something was being hidden. But what many missed was that Meredith was redefining her relationship with the platform itself. The channel had grown beyond a hobby. It was now a business, a responsibility, and a public window into a life that was still unfolding. And with that came hard decisions. How much do you owe an audience? Where does honesty end and privacy begin? Those questions don't come with clear rules, especially when your livelihood depends on staying visible. Behind the scenes, farm responsibilities continued stacking up. Equipment issues, rising costs, unpredictable outcomes that no amount of planning could fully control. Add family needs on top of that, and there was little room left for performative positivity. Meredith wasn't stepping away. She was adjusting, learning how to exist online without letting it consume everything offline. That adjustment didn't always translate well to the internet. Slower uploads were read as disengagement. Quieter posts were interpreted as distress. And once a narrative starts forming online, it rarely slows down on its own. People weren't just watching her content anymore, they were searching for signs. Still, Meredith chose the long game. She focused on sustainability, not spectacle. On protecting what mattered most, even if it meant disappointing strangers who wanted more access. And while that decision cost her some momentum, it preserved something far more important. Because the story people were trying to uncover wasn't about a single dramatic event. It was about a woman learning in real time how to carry a public life without losing herself in it. This is where the gap between perception and reality became impossible to ignore. As Meredith's content slowed and her tone shifted, the internet did what it always does. It filled in the blanks. Entire narratives formed without confirmation. Commenters spoke with certainty about things they couldn't possibly know. And once those ideas spread, they were treated like facts. Some rumors focused on her marriage. Others hinted at financial trouble, health struggles, or a major personal loss. Titles and threads framed her story as if something shocking had been exposed, even though nothing had actually been confirmed. The truth is, Meredith never announced a dramatic turning point. There was no single post explaining everything, and that absence became fuel. But when you look closely at what's verifiable, a different picture emerges. Meredith never disappeared. She didn't abandon her platform. She didn't contradict herself. What changed was her pace and her boundaries. She chose not to turn hardship into headlines. And in a creator economy built on constant disclosure, that choice alone can look suspicious. What often gets overlooked is how normal her situation actually was. Farming is unpredictable. Family needs shift. Energy runs out. People evolve. Not every quiet season hides a scandal. Sometimes it just reflects someone doing their best to hold things together without broadcasting every crack. The irony is that Meredith's commitment to authenticity is what created confusion. She never pretended life was perfect, but she also refused to dramatize it. That left viewers used to extremes feeling unsatisfied. And when audiences feel entitled to answers they aren't given, speculation turns aggressive. The reality is far less sensational than the rumors suggest. Meredith didn't owe the internet a breakdown, an explanation, or a confession. She owed herself stability, and choosing privacy in a public role is one of the hardest decisions a creator can make. In the end, the question isn't what happened to her. It's why so many people assumed something had to. And that says far more about online culture than it does about Meredith Bernard. What often gets lost in online speculation is the simple fact that Meredith never stopped moving forward. While people debated theories and searched for hidden meanings, she kept doing the work that had always defined her life. The farm still demanded attention, the family still came first, and the routine, though quieter online, never truly stopped. Over time, her content reflected a different kind of strength, not the loud, polished resilience people expect from influencers, but a grounded endurance. She spoke more about patience, about trusting the process even when results aren't immediate, about understanding that growth doesn't always look like expansion. Sometimes it looks like preservation. Those messages resonated deeply with viewers who weren't looking for drama, but for honesty. The shift also filtered her audience. Casual viewers drawn in by aesthetics or curiosity faded out. What remained was a smaller, more invested community that understood the realities behind the screen. People who recognize that farm life is cyclical, that seasons change not just in the fields, but in people, and that stepping back doesn't always mean giving up. Meredith's story never fit neatly into the kind of narrative the internet prefers. There was no downfall, no shocking reveal, no comeback arc designed for clicks. Just a woman learning how to balance responsibility, visibility, and personal limits in a world that rarely encourages moderation. That quiet refusal to play into extremes became its own statement. In many ways, the speculation surrounding her only highlighted what made her different. She didn't exploit vulnerability. She didn't monetize crisis. She didn't reshape her life to satisfy an audience's appetite for answers. Instead, she stayed rooted in the same values that brought people to her channel in the first place. And that's what ultimately explains the changes people noticed. Not loss, not scandal, but growth that didn't need an announcement. Meredith Bernard didn't disappear. She adapted. And in a digital space that rewards noise, choosing steadiness over spectacle may be the most misunderstood move of all. In the end, nothing happened to Meredith Bernard in the way the internet wanted it to. There was no hidden scandal, no shocking reveal waiting to be uncovered. What changed was her pace, her boundaries, and her willingness to protect what mattered most. And in a world that rewards constant access, that kind of decision often gets misunderstood. Meredith's story is a reminder that quiet doesn't mean broken, and stepping back doesn't mean failing. Sometimes it means choosing longevity over noise and stability over spectacle. The rumors, the theories, and the clickbait titles say less about her life and more about how uncomfortable we've become with creators who don't perform their struggles on demand. She didn't disappear. She adapted. And maybe the real takeaway isn't what people think they missed, but what she refused to sacrifice to keep going. By the time the noise finally settled, the lesson in Meredith's story became clearer. What she built was never meant to be a performance. It was a window, and windows don't stay open forever. Over the years, she showed what it looked like to work hard, raise a family, and stay grounded when life didn't follow a neat timeline. But she also showed something far less common online: how to pull back without burning everything down. Faith played a quiet but steady role in that evolution, not as a slogan or a selling point, but as an anchor. In moments where clarity was missing, she leaned into trust rather than explanation. That approach doesn't always translate well on the internet, where transparency is often confused with access. But for Meredith, faith wasn't about proving strength. It was about sustaining it. Her journey also highlighted a truth many creators never talk about. When your real life becomes content, people begin to feel entitled to your hardest moments. They expect vulnerability on demand, and when you don't deliver it the way they want, they assume the worst. Meredith challenged that expectation simply by refusing to play along. Instead of chasing engagement through chaos, she chose consistency through values. Family over frequency, integrity over impressions, stability over speculation. Those choices don't create viral moments, but they do create longevity, even if that longevity looks quieter than what people expect. What makes her story resonate isn't what went wrong, but what didn't. She didn't lose herself to the platform. She didn't trade peace for relevance. And she didn't let outside narratives rewrite her reality. In a space where creators are often pushed to extremes, Meredith showed another option. And maybe that's the part that unsettled people the most, because when someone steps back without falling apart, it forces a different kind of reflection, one that doesn't rely on drama, but on intention.